we got to wade in the water. Anybody disagree with that? You know, there's a great story in the Hebrew Bible about Moses. And you may recall that Moses got the children of Israel finally to agree to leave Egypt. And they got to the Red Sea. And it was their first time that they were kind of up against it, if you would. And so what happened is that the Egyptian forces were coming, and the children of Israel reacted as children. Moses, why in the world did you bring us here? We're going to get killed. Why did we leave that good meal? There's no food tonight. On and on. And Jesus said you got to trust God. And here's what you are, not Jesus, but Moses. That's right. Wrong Bible. I'm getting there. But anyway. Same thing. So anyway, they have a little debate going on over here about which Bible it is. But anyway, that's all right. So anyway, he finally said to the children, you know what? If you want salvation, step in the water. Step into the sea. That's a calling. That's a calling that we have to wade in the water. And you and I sometimes when we answer our callings have to wade in the water. This morning what I want to do is look at two kinds of callings. I want to look at callings that we have every day in our lives. And how do we step up to them? And then the next thing we'll do is look at the waves of callings that take place in our life. So as we look at this idea of daily callings, the thing I went to was the Sermon on the Mount. Some authorities say that this is the only sermon that Jesus may have actually written out before he delivered it. And that these were guidelines that were being redefined by Jesus of taking the old law and saying, here's how you apply it in your daily life. Here's how you make a change in your life. Here's how you wade in the water, if you would. And so what we are called to understand is that we cannot just quote the law, as Jesus said, but we must apply and live the law. Every day we are called forth to act in positive, practical, and progressive ways. We are called to release our egos and stand in alignment with Christ's consciousness. Now, how do we do that? Well, let's look at the Sermon on the Mount. You see, first of all, we are called to be the light of the world. Big order. Jesus said, you are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand. And it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. We are called to be that light each and every day. Not the day we choose. Not the day we feel bad and say, no, I'm not going to be the light today. Sorry. Turn my light off today. Don't bother me. And we do that sometimes, you know. And so what we want to do is keep our light shining because it's always there. It's always in you and can be outside of you if you start to follow the callings that Jesus talked about. We are called to manage our anger, to be in control of our anger, to release our anger in positive and loving ways. Jesus said, but I say to you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, R-A-C-A, you are, which means, by the way, in Aramaic, you are worthless, you are of no value, you are not worth anything whatsoever, you are a despicable human being. Kind of hard stuff, right? But if you think about people that way, maybe even piece of it, what Jesus is saying, don't think about a person because they disagree with you. In your anger, don't jump all over that and belittle the person. That's what we're talking about. So sometimes when we get angry, and it's natural to get angry, by the way. You're not going to stop doing that. More than likely, most of you. But how do I manage my anger is the question. How do I let that lead to the light? How do I step forth and be more than I thought I could be and not belittle or look down on anybody? Then Jesus said, forgive and make amends. On a daily basis, forgive and make amends. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. You know, in the 12-step program, it says make amends. And then make amends again. Now, the secret to that is that you're not asking for forgiveness when you make an amend, although we'll get there in a second. You are not asking the person to change how they feel. You're just saying, I would like to say I'm sorry, or whatever the right words, for being in this position, treating you this way in your life. Now, the person may still be angry with you. The person may not agree with you. The person may say, get out of my house. But you still have made amends. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Because you have to walk away saying everything's okay, no matter the reaction of the individual. Don't worry about what's happening on the outside. What's happening on the inside is what I think Jesus was saying. And so before you pray, and he was talking to the Pharisees then and the Sadducees, before you pray, before you ever act holy and more righteous than another, make amends. Get your life straight. Get your head straight. Get your eyes focused. And when you do that, then you can step into the next step. And then Jesus said, be nonviolent. Be nonviolent. Agree with your adversary quickly while you're on the way with him. In essence, it says, to court. And he says, don't promise what you can't deliver. So in nonviolence, it means if somebody is my adversary, if somebody has a different opinion than I do, then I need to use the idea of nonviolence. You know, that really calls for dialogue. It calls for forgiveness in a sense, but more importantly that, it calls for being willing to look for another way to work out the difference. That's nonviolent communication. That's saying, I have the ability to agree and disagree, with love being the glue that keeps us together. And so we're looking at this idea of nonviolence. Then Jesus said, don't promise what you can't deliver. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. 634 of them a day. But I say to you, do not swear at all, but let your yes be yes and your no, no. Again, don't promise what you can't deliver. Say yes if you can, and say no if you can't. It's okay. And whatever the other person says is none of your business. Now, they may dialogue with you, and you should listen to that, but it's still your ultimate decision whether you're going to say yes or no. But say it clearly and concisely without any idea that they are less than you are or they're wrong, okay? And then he said that what we have to learn to do is that we have to learn to resist in a nonviolent way. But it starts in our hearts. It starts in our hearts. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whosoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. That's a tough one. He even went on to say, if they take your coat, give them the cloak. Now you're naked. And some people think that was a joke that Jesus was telling. I think he was saying, don't worry about being naked. Worry about what's right to do in your heart. And so we have this idea that what we need to do is be nonviolent in our heart. During the civil rights movement, one of the things that happened is that those people who participated in it had to go to class. They had to have lessons. They had to learn. Some of you know that. And what they had to learn is how to love their enemy, love that person who was persecuting, love that person by nonviolent resistance. There was a woman on NPR the other morning, I did not get her name, but anyway, she was talking about the fact that as far as she was concerned, as she looked at history, there had been no way that civilizations and people really changed unless it was through nonviolent resistance, nonviolent activity. That when there was war, there was another war. When there was anger, when there was polarity, there was more polarity, more anger. And so what we have to learn to do is be willing, if we are called, to be nonviolent and to resist at the same time, to take a stand, to wade in the water. And that's a challenge for many of us. And then Jesus said, love your enemies. These are day-to-day things, guys. Love your enemies. You have heard it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Just as your Father in heaven is perfect. You say, wait a minute, Richard. This is getting a little serious. How can I be perfect? Except for those who are perfectionists. But how can I be perfect? That was just a joke. What that verse means in Aramaic is be inclusive as your Father in heaven is inclusive. Be loving as your Father in heaven is loving. Be forgiving as your Father in heaven is forgiving. Be ye perfect in the idea of what the Christ is, the Father is, the Mother is within you. Does that start to make some sense now? You see, when we put it in worldly perspective, we get confused. But when we put it in alignment with the absolute, with spiritual perspectives, then we get on target. You know, we have all kinds of callings, as I said, and all sizes of callings. And sometimes these callings may work in synchronicity, which was a statement that Carl Jung defined and came up with. He actually coined the phrase. And it means the meaningful coincidence of two or more events where something other than the probability of chance takes place. So why do we say no to our callings, especially daily callings? Let me suggest there are three things here. Or Greg Lavoie discussed three things in his book Callings. One is resistance to change. I'm right, and I don't want to change the way I see things. And you must be wrong if I'm right. You know. I mean, if you're still a Baptist and you found about unity, you must be wrong. Right? We got to watch that, haven't we? Huh? See? And so what we have to understand is that we need to be willing to make a change, to be willing to be separate, to willing to step out of our comfort zone. I'm not going to ask you to do it next Sunday, and if you ever do it, take turns. But I want you to go to other churches that you haven't been in 20 years. Ronnie does it regularly. He even has the nerve to send me an email saying, this is where I worship this morning. But you know what? Here's what I think you're going to find out. It wasn't like you thought it was. Not today. It was like that when you were there. But it's changed. People are more open. People are beginning to see the world a lot like we see the world, and we're beginning to see the world the way they see the world. My brother-in-law says, you know, what we have in common, Richard, is that we all want to see the kingdom of heaven here on earth. You got any problems with that? Amen. Amen, right? Amen. And that's what we're working for. That's what we're looking at. And so therefore, we don't have to have this resistance to change. And then the second thing after resistance to change is fear of the unknown. We call that chaos. How many people like to live in chaos? Okay, I knew you did. But anyway, you know what? That's tough to do that because it is the fear of the unknown. Greg Lavoie, author of Callings, defines resistance as a form of defense mechanisms which can protect us against the possibility of being. And he says when we find ourselves in chaos, what we're doing is being overwhelmed by the boogeyman of sudden change. Yeah? So what we have to learn is that we can have the fear of the unknown and step into it anyway. We can step in the water even though we don't know what's going to happen. But if we trust Source, if we trust God, then we do know that something good is going to happen, and some way I'm going to be facing chaos in a different way. You see, chaos is the pure potential from which all things and all beings emerge. In the beginning, there was the void. In the beginning, there was chaos. And from chaos comes order. From chaos comes light. From chaos comes opportunity. Deepak Chopra says that the chaos is the field of unlimited possibilities. You see, the chaos is the logos in 1 John. It is the word making itself into being. We wonder if we have what it takes is the third thing. Are we good enough? Are we smart enough? Are we disciplined enough? Are we educated enough? Or patient enough? And do we have enough faith? And we ask ourselves those questions. Myrtle Fillmore was at a meeting and a person stood up and said, let's pray that we have enough money. Myrtle Fillmore said, no, let's pray that we have enough faith. Right? So we have to, again, not believe what we see, but see what we believe. And so as we go to our heart space, as we start to understand that, yes, we do have callings on a daily basis, but we have them on a larger basis too. And I would suggest to you that these callings really sometimes come as waves. And we catch the wave, and we surf into life to the beach. And then we get another calling. We go out and we catch a bigger wave. And maybe another wave that's smaller, another wave that's bigger. And then we look back and we say, I was on purpose with my life because I followed the waves. I followed the callings in my life. I want to share a story with you this morning. It's from a book called Small Miracles, Extraordinary Coincidences from Everyday Life. The ones are all true stories. They're phenomenal. But I want to share one about Joey Rickless today. Joey Rickless was a young Jewish boy. He was 19 years old, and he decided that he wanted to become enlightened. And he went and talked to his dad, Adam. And he said, I'm going to travel to India, Dad. I'm going to quit school, and I'm going to become enlightened. Well, at first his dad didn't know what to say, so he called a few of his friends and said, how can I handle this? They said, love him. He'll turn around. He'll be back home before long. He'll probably run out of money while he's there. So just don't worry about it. Let him be free. Let him get this out of his system, and he'll be back. And his dad said, okay, fine. And that's what he said. Joey, I'm behind you 100%, and I'm going to give you some money even to go on the trip, help you out a little bit. But once you get there, depending on how long you stay, you may have to work it out for yourself. But I love you, son. I just want you to know that. Well, about 2 days before Joey was ready to catch his plane to go to India, he went back to his dad and he said, oh, by the way, I've got to tell you what enlightened means. And he said, what are you talking about? He said, well, it means that I'm looking for something other than the Jewish faith. I no longer want to be a Jew or study Judaism. I want a different way. I'm looking for it in India. His father lost it. Because you see, Adam, his father, had been the only member of his family to survive the Holocaust. He had been in 3 concentration camps. The only member, and his vow was that his family would not lose their faith and that he would teach them to live in the faith and to be the faith of Judaism. And here was his only child, his only son, saying, nope, I'm giving it up. And so his father lashed out at him. You are no longer my son. You are no longer welcome in this home. You no longer get my support. Get out and stay out. And Joey said to his father, I will. I'll do it exactly that because I don't want to be around here anymore. And that was their parting words. Well, Joey went to India and he met a young woman named Sarah there who was kind of like, that one in his life, soulmate. And she also happened to have been Jewish and was looking to become enlightened. And they hung around for about 6 years in India. They were in Bombay, and they were still not quite enlightened. They're still looking for it. Still looking for it. Because something inside just wasn't quite right for them. And of all things, in Bombay, millions of people, Joy's best friend from high school shows up on the corner. Sammy. And he was amazed and glad to see Sammy. And hadn't seen anybody from the United States for quite a while that he knew personally. And they were talking for a few minutes, and Sammy said, Joy, I'm really sorry to hear about your father. And Joy said, what are you talking about? He said, you don't know? Know what? Your father passed away 2 years ago. Joy said, what happened? He said, he had a heart attack. And Joy said back, no, he didn't have a heart attack. He had a broken heart because I broke his heart. I killed my father. Sarah tried to console him and said, no, that's not true. He had a heart attack. You didn't kill your father. Yes, I did. And so for 3 or 4 days, he was in this pain and this agony, as far as he was concerned, knowing that he had killed his father, and there was no way to reconcile. None. And about a week later, he said to Sarah, another calling, I need to go to Israel. The book said she wrinkled her nose up and said, you got to do what? Are you kidding me? That's everything we've been against. He said, I need to go to Israel because I killed my father. And so they got on a plane and she agreed and he went to Israel. When he got to Israel, he said, now in Jerusalem, he said, I need to go pray. And she said, you mean meditate? And he said, no, I got to go pray. Just like I did as a kid. And I need to go to the Wailing Wall to do that. So she kind of put up with him and followed him to the Wailing Wall. And then they started to talk, and in an hour they had this really strong conversation where they disagreed with each other. She said, I don't even know who you are anymore. And she left him. And he said, but I thought we were soulmates. She said, but we're out of alignment. And so she left him there at the Wailing Wall. He went on down the Wailing Wall and he prayed for a while, and then he saw people putting little slips of paper in crevices, as they do for petitions of prayer. He went over to a rabbi and said, what are they doing? And the rabbi explained to him the process. And he said, can I do that? And he said, sure. So what he did is he wrote a letter to his father. And as he wrote the letter to his father, it took him about an hour to find a crevice to put it in, okay? And he wrote this, Dear Father, I beg you to forgive me for the pain I have caused you. I loved you very much, and I will never forget you. And please know that nothing you taught me was in vain. I will not betray our faith, and I love you, and I promise to obey. And then he looked, and he looked, and he looked for a place. And he found a crevice finally after an hour, as I said, where it appeared to be empty. And when he stuck his piece of paper in, another piece of paper fell out. Now, he felt terrible. He didn't know what to do. And so his piece of paper was there, and the crevice stuck in there. And, of course, he leaned down, and he picked up this little piece of paper. And he said, now, should I put it in with mine, or should I find another crevice? And as he was thinking about that, he said, I wonder what this one says. And so he started to open it up, and then he closed it up. He said, no, that's not right. Then he opened it up again. Remember, this is a true story. My dear son, Joy, if you should ever happen to come to Israel and sometime, some way, miraculously find this note, this is what I want you to know. I always loved you, even when you hurt me, and I will never stop loving you. You are not always, you are, got to read it here. It's my handwriting. You will always be on my mind. You will always be my beloved son. And Joy, please know that I forgive you for everything you did, and only hope that you will forgive a foolish old man, Adam. Father. He was guided, and he had another calling to go into rabbinical school there in Israel. He was in for 2 years. And as all Jewish people know, good Jewish people know, is that rabbis are supposed to have a wife. And so the head rabbi said, now, Joy, you have to find a wife. And we want to help you out. And so Joy said, okay, I guess. And so he said, well, there's a woman at the women's college that we'd like for you to meet. And some people think you'd be a perfect match. Can you come over Friday night for dinner? I mean, what's Joy going to say? You know. And he said, okay, fine, I'll come over and let's just see. He said, now, you don't have to, you know, if it's not the right person, it's okay. I'm not forcing on you. I just want you to meet this person. So he goes into the living room, he sits down, and then the door opens, and in walks Sarah. And he said, Sarah, how in the world did you get here? She said, you know, the strangest thing happened. After we broke up, I decided, well, I'm here in Israel. I might as well travel. And she said, I fell in love with the people. Then I fell in love with the land, and then I fell in love with my childhood faith. And he said, oh my goodness. And she said, don't worry, Joey. We're in alignment now. Will you marry me? Good Jewish girl. Will you marry me? We have to step in the water. We have to listen to our hearts. We have to listen to our minds. And as we do, what happens is it opens us up to Spirit. You know, when Spirit calls, it means we are called to go beyond our limits because the one that calls us is beyond our limits. That's the book Jonah, Andre, and Pierre Emmanuel. Accept your daily callings. Step into them. Be the light. Accept your life callings. In phases, if necessary. In steps. But follow your heart. Do what is necessary to fall in alignment with what you are called to do. What you're called to be. And for most of us, that means just staying right where we are. Doing what we're doing really well. And then, as you do that, you will find, you will know, you will experience your spiritual callings. God bless.